Type Moon has a lot of really, really weird, obscure works. Oh god, I should have made a list of them before going into this, but like, there's that one that's just, I think it's a one-off, where you have Waver as a schoolgirl, and it's a romance with this Kandar or something like that. I've been telling Seki to look into that. Not to mention all the billions of Fate Grand Order works, but the one side that's always been weirdest to me, and this one shouldn't be as weird, but it is the Melty Blood side. What I'm looking at today is Hana no Miyako. I think that translates to Miyako, or the Flower of Miyako. This is an interesting one. It's a manga that was written by the original author of Melty Blood, like the original Melty Blood, the Dojin Melty Blood that got released at the con, if I remember my Melty Blood history right. If you didn't get tipped off by the title, it's actually about an existing Type Moon character that comes from Melty Blood. Miyako, for those of you who remember, that little pigtailed lolly girl that set Twitter on fire leading up to the release of Type Lumina. The manga itself is supposed to be set long after Melty Blood in an alternate universe and follows Miyako in a battle, it's like a battle manga that's set in when Miyako's in high school. It's not that far-fetched of a concept, but I do promise it gets weird from there. The first thing you'll notice is that a lot of the characters in this manga are direct references to other Type Moon characters. Artoria is here, except it's not actually Artoria. No. This one's male. It's not Arthur either. Artoria is just a trap. Okay, so the manga is more a reference than it is a sequel, featuring designs and characters from across Type Moon. Except maybe not, because Miyako's teacher, the one that she's going to reference multiple times in this manga, is still Shiki Nanaya, or alternatively Shiki Tono, for those not in the know with Melty Blood. And we know specifically that he left with Arcwade after the events of, I can't remember if it's Tsukuhime or Melty Blood, one of the two. Somehow this makes Melty Blood canon to it. It's a little odd. It quickly gets even crazier when we're introduced to Shiki Nanaya. Not the same Shiki Nanaya you're currently thinking of. No. This Shiki Nanaya is not the one that you can play right now in Actress Again Current Code. It's an alternate universe Shiki Nanaya that is gender bent and follows a narrative influence from the characterization you see in Shiki Ryogi from Kara no Kyokai, or Garden of Sinners. Oh, yeah, and there's a Lolly Gilgamesh here. And one of the recurring characters is the daughter of Kuzuki and a Greek woman who's probably Castor. It's honestly a little hard to follow what's actually trying to be Type Moon canon and what's not at times. In that way, it's not surprising that its original run in the magazine that it was published in ended up being dropped in 2014. Even as a Type Moon fan, this series is a little too out there lore-wise to actually be considered when you're looking at just the wider Type Moon picture as a whole. It is unmistakably still Type Moon, though. It still has a place in the franchise as it consistently appears in Type Moon Ace as one-offs until around 2015, at which point it stopped being published altogether. It would later go on to receive a Dojin continuation called Hana no Miyako Legends, which would go on for around 3 chapters in 2015 before going on hiatus. As of 2017, the author has stated that the storyboards all the way up to chapter 7 are done, but he just hasn't kept up with drawing the manga, meaning he's still working on it at least. But then again, as of 2022, we haven't received a single update on it, so perhaps not. Alright, so what are my actual thoughts on this? Let's put on that the snobby Type Moon glasses here. Be a true Type Moon fan. The story's a little weird. Beyond its canonicity, is that even a word? Canonicity? Whatever. It was cancelled and went on hiatus before it really did find itself a direction. I think the best thing I can say about it is that as the original run was about to be canceled, the character of Miyako started having a fair bit more personality than she did very early on. Like, they started to figure it out. And the story started to see some movement, making its cancellation all the more kind of unfortunate. I think as a battle manga, it fails to deliver, well, much in any way of battle. As a slice of life manga with a battle backdrop, it fails to give us much of a good slice of life. When I said it was hard to follow, I mean that in both lore and its story. The story just wasn't there with what was published, and it didn't seem to know where exactly it was going. Maybe if I had read a little closer, or if I reread it again, I could pick it apart more. But the manga just didn't seem to know what it wanted to be. That said, I did read onto the Dojin as well. You know, the true source material for Fate. That's not staying in the video. I think there was a remarkable improvement in quality during the Legend Dojin. Its art seemed more fun, like it's more well done, I think. Maybe it's a product of having more time to work on these, but it was much better handled, and the characters just seemed far more defined, like I could actually identify personalities between them. And its dialogue boxes seem to have been better organized, but that's just my opinion, and could all come down to the translation quality of the Dojin versus the original publication. I do want to stress, though, that there is some good here. I think the best moments of the manga was when you got to see young Miyako and older Miyako thinking simultaneously, weighing each other's desires to decide what to do in the face of a confrontation she had. It was really good for defining her character, and I just wish we saw a little bit more of that, because at that point Miyako was starting to be recognizable as the Miyako that we remember from Melty Blood. What little there was of it anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and put some analysis here, because unlike my review of the first volume of Fate Requiem, I don't think the review portion is as important. Let's be real, it's a discontinued manga that Type Moon likely won't ever give any real attention to in its other works. It didn't even manage to get thick enough in plot for it to be worth reading for Type Moon lore heads. With even the Legend Dojin being on hiatus, I think it would be a hard sell even if I came out singing its praises here. Rather, I think this is a fascinating piece of Type Moon history. It was at one point a full Type Moon manga work, and based on what I read, something was trying to come from it. It did have explicit moments where it seemed like lore was absolutely going to happen, and eventually I get the idea that in this story, it wasn't going to be normal. It probably would have spun off into something more interesting for a lot of us Type Moon fans. So, if I had to speculate, this manga was originally very similar to the early ideas for Prisma Ilia, except primarily made for Melty Blood. Take a side character from the main work and flesh them out heavily through a referential genre shift that would throw out much of the Type Moon tropes and is slightly fine fudging known canon to produce a spin-off story to give that character more spotlight. I have to imagine, had the series really been allowed to branch out, it could have reached a point not unlike Prisma Ilia Three-Way or T.H.E, where its plot would come into focus after a largely cute slice of life manga. The series had potential, so what went wrong here? If I had to guess, it's the publication. The publication date started at 2013, a full 3 years after any Melty Blood game was released. Not to mention, at this point, I think Fate had eclipsed Melty Blood in popularity, changing expectations for what needed to perform and how well. Of course, I could also point to the lack of any real interest behind Miyako, at least compared to Ilia. Ilia is a Fate character that many recognize as on the same standing as the three main heroines of the Fate Stay Night roots, whereas Miyako is, for one, only in the spin-off fighting game, and for two, is far more of a gag character. By the way, she might have been in Kagetsu no Toya, I think that's what it is, the pseudo-sequel, the Tsukuhime, but I've never read that one and I don't know much about it, so don't spoil me, please. That doesn't mean it couldn't have worked. That just means that it needed to stand on its own more in the battle manga genre than Prisma Ilia did in the magical girl genre. I think the aforementioned lore conclusion also hindered. Being so blatantly referential to other Type Moon works without actually giving them much weight in the story makes the entire thing read very similarly to some gag Melty Blood spin-offs, and a lot harder to take seriously. I think had the series quickened in defining Miyako's character and provided just a tiny bit more meat for Type Moon fans beyond the surface level homages, then it might have done at least a little bit better than it did. Give it a read if you're curious. Give it a read if you're really a fan of the funny pigtailed lolly girl from the fighting game. But if you're like me and hadn't heard of it till now, then just know you really aren't missing much at the moment, and would probably be better off reading a different Type Moon manga. Well guys, I guess this is the end. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and then, the YouTube things. And we'll see you back next time. I don't know what's coming out around now. I think we got a couple Seki Reacts coming, and this is in December. Yeah, this is coming out in December. So, I guess see you around, and Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. Good luck on your Muramasa rolls, you Muramasa fans or you Shiro fans.